Claims.
Ms. Patrick?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'll call claims to order and we have one item on the agenda, William Hopkins versus City of Schenectady. Do we need to do that in the executive session?
I would recommend that we go into executive session. We have outside counsel here to just discuss an update on this matter.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Second? All in favor? Aye.
Just leave the door open for now. We have to-
I'm sorry?
The public has Not yet. Okay, we are ready. So this evening, we're going to have a presentation from Superintendent Solaire on the Schenectady School District Revitalization Plan Capital Project.
Right.
All right?
Well, thank you. Good evening. I'm sorry. I have to turn it on?
No, it's on.
Okay.
Green light's on there, so you're good.
So good evening, City Council. Thanks for having me. I think the last time I was here was the first time I had ever engaged with City Council. So tonight I wanted to just take a quick moment to share our revitalization plan. We have started the conversation and we started this journey almost a year ago. We started this behind the scenes kind of planning, talking about what would be our next kind of major capital project for Schenectady City Schools. And so we are now going around the city. Obviously here tonight, or will be tomorrow, we have another presentation at one of our middle schools. I think tomorrow's Mount Pleasant, if I'm correct. And where we just want to educate the community on what we're asking them to vote for on May 16th. And so it's called the Schenectady Revitalization Plan. Those are the next couple meeting dates. So we're here tonight on April 17th, speaking to all of you. And obviously if you have questions, I want this to be like a dialogue, if you don't mind. I'll go through the slides as quick as possible because I know you have a lot on your agenda. But if you have any questions, obviously you represent various stakeholders in this city, and I think it's important that your voices, be heard, and if you have questions or there's clarity. It is a big ask that we're asking our community. It's not something that's been done here in Schenectady that I can find any record of, and Kathy Lewis is probably our longest standing board member, doesn't recall us ever going out for something for $300 million, but we've done some things before. Tyrone, next slide. So keep going. So again, I talked about these information sessions. This is just a flyer that we put out. Again, tomorrow we are at Mount Pleasant, tomorrow night at 5:30, and then we're again on Thursday at 5 o'clock at a night at middle school. So if you want to share with your constituents for your various communities, they can come on out, ask questions. It's open to everybody. So everyone who obviously is a tax-paying city member or resident can come out, ask questions, or if they're just curious about what we're doing. Next slide, Tim. So I've started this conversation when I got here in 2021. I brought this little, what the kids say as hashtags, right? You gotta have a hashtag for every movement, every kind of theme. So our hashtag's been Schenectady Rising since July of 2021 when I arrived. And we focused on rebuilding, reigniting, bringing back energy to what I heard was a phenomenal district. Everyone always tells me the good old days stories, right? And so I'm a firm believer that the good old days are still here and can easily be reachieved. And so when I got here, the first thing we had to do was reopen our schools. They were closed for over 18 months to virtual learning experience. Again, no fault to anybody. It was the pandemic. Folks didn't really know what to do. We've learned a lot since then. So we reopened 5 days. I'm proud to say we never closed last year as a result of COVID restrictions or the pandemic or a high number of absences. The staff did a great job. Our administrators did a great job. And we've been kind of rebuilding, and that's the conversation we're having today. What does rebuilding look like? And so there's obviously rebuilding of academic programming, rebuilding of staff that may be impacted by layoffs, but also rebuilding of our infrastructure. We believe that high-quality students and high-quality staff deserve high-quality facilities. And so that's what we're going to talk to you about, what the vision is here. Tyrone, next slide. I also think it's always important, because everyone always talks about enrollment and residents. This is right from the census data that happened during the pandemic. 2020, you could remember there was a census. If you go right on census.gov, you can pull these trends right for Schenectady. You can see Schenectady was one of the only communities that actually grew in New York State. Many of the other ones, it's in blue, so that's how you know it grew. Anything in orange lost residents. And so yes, the overall state lost people, but our community didn't lose people. And so I think that's very important as we look to think about what we do to our infrastructure. There's housing units is on there as well. You can see the number of housing units also grew in Schenectady County. Not necessarily the city, but overall in the county. which does include the city. I couldn't get just city-specific information from the census, but I was able to get county. Next slide, Tara. This is obviously a look at Schenectady, the city within the county. You can kind of see us, cool shape silhouette there. Our population, and obviously we're about 10 square miles. And again, about 67,000 residents live here in Schenectady. Next one, Tara. This is our district overlaid on our city map. And those beautiful colors, they don't represent like Fruity Pebbles or anything interesting like that. They're actually our kind of feeding pattern, our colored enrollment patterns for these various schools. So each of those colors dictates an enrollment pattern for the school that's in it. So like if you look at the yellow, that's Yates. If you look at the pink, that's Oneida Middle School's kind of catchment area, is the larger area, which includes pink, yellow, green, and orange. Basically, our kids kind of come from all over parts of the city when they go to our middle school. They come in 3 zones. In our elementary schools, they kind of are more neighborhood-based, but they're not always neighborhood-based. And so I say that because sometimes there's special arrangements, sometimes some of our programming dictates enrollment. And so, at the end of the day, we're 10 square miles. It doesn't take far to get from one side of Schenectady to the other, which is a beautiful thing. One thing I will point out here, that's a breakdown of our buildings: 11 elementary schools, 3 middle. We have an alternative campus, an adult education center also housed there separately, a high school, and then we have currently a vacant elementary school. Fulton Elementary School is currently vacant. We have some staff there that are there just to maintain the staff, and we have a couple offices that were being used. But total square feet that we're responsible for as a district is about 1.8 million square feet. That's a lot of square feet. Our custodial staff do a great job maintaining it, but there's only so much you can do given that the average age of our campuses is 95 years old. And so there's only so much clear coat you can put on a floor to make it look good. After a while, there's only so much with just clear coat. No more terrazzo or anything of that nature on the bottom. Next slide, Tim. This is just a breakdown. I always like to put a name to the age of the school. Sometimes that's really helpful because there's always some personal significance, right? Like Damani, where'd you go to school?
I went to Woodlawn.
There you go. 1972. So that's just right when you were born. No, just kidding. He's a lot younger than that. So you can see the age of the schools. And one thing I will point out, Howe is 1905. It's our oldest building, still being used with kids in a really important community. It's surrounded by community if you look at it. I only know that because I always get complaints about parking. And there's only so much I can do because we're pretty landlocked over there. But what's important there is that the building is slowly starting to get to the point where it's going to be harder to maintain given the age of the building. So that's a breakdown. Howe's a big one I like to point out as the oldest building, and Woodlawn is probably our most recent building that the district has built in 1972. Oneida doesn't really count because it kind of was built and then it was added on. So although it was closed for about 5 years, from 2017 to 2022, or 2012 to 2017, you can remember that it did exist before it was closed down for a little bit for renovations. Next slide. So again, Schenectady has done this work before. It's just done it very differently. And so I'm of the belief that it's time to take a little bit more of a radical approach in the sense of reimagining this, doing this a little bit differently, not asking our community every 5 years to like, hey, can we go out and borrow money? Instead, we'd like to look at like a 7-year window and say we want to go out for a little bit more, and here's why we want to go out. So if you look on the left, you see phase 1, phase 2. When I got here, the completion of phase 2 is still occurring currently, but you can see the schools in phase 1 and the dollar values that was used for each of those schools. And phase 2 was the dollar value on phase 2. But you're going to notice something in phase 2. There was a couple schools that did not get touched. Just the projects were a little bit bigger. There was some underestimation, some change orders that had to occur. So some things had to come off the list to stay within the amount that was borrowed. But phase 1 and phase 2 was a total of I'm going to round up, $135 million. So we're asking for $300 million for basically trying to double that scope a little bit. But The one thing I want to point out is we put the dollar values of how we got that 300 million to the schools that we're proposing. So the high school has not been touched in quite some time. And we're looking at about a price tag of 126 million, and I'll tell you how we got there. Some of that is building condition survey, which we're required to do every 5 years. That says, what is wrong with your buildings? Every 5 years, you kind of say, what's the life of the furnace? What's the life of the electrical? What's the quality of the windows? What's the quality of the lockers? Things of that nature. You're gonna notice Central Park is on here, Steinmetz campus. And they have larger price tags because they're bigger footprints, bigger schools. Typically, the secondary schools are a little more expensive. But these are like not just fixing a stairwell, changing windows. This is a whole renovation. Take everybody out of the building, kind of gut the building, redo the campus, bring folks back in. So that's what you see of those price tags there. You're gonna notice at Fulton, we put in parentheses Kane because we do have to occupy Fulton. And in order to do that, we're gonna have to move a school in there while we work on another school. We had proposed here that it would be swing space for Kane if we're successful with purchasing Kane, and the price tag there. We also have a central kitchen. We feed all of our kids in the district. We deliver food to pretty much all of our elementary schools from our high school, which people don't know that. So we cook a lot of our food at the high school, and then we put them in trucks and we drop them off to our schools. So we need to make some serious upgrades to create a central kitchen for our district and enhance what we currently have. We have like coolers that are sitting out in the back of the high school. You probably don't know that or not, but if you did see it, you'd be pretty amazed at what we do with the little bit we have. And then there's some district-wide building condition survey priorities. They would touch multiple buildings. These would touch other schools that aren't a part of this initial list, but they would be identified through the process. Next slide, Tara. This is, again, all of this is proposed because we need still voter approval, but once we get in, we wanted to show the voters in the community that we've thought about this really intentionally with our partners at SEI Design. They've done a fantastic job walking on this journey with us. They helped us put this timeline together. And you can see we would start, as soon as we get voter approval, SCLA is our first campus. And we've already started the process to kind of phase out the current programming there to allow it to become vacant so we can start to get into that work. And you're also going to notice Fulton being first because right now it is vacant. So we want to prepare those spaces, make them high quality spaces, and then swing kids into them. Most people don't want to swing into a space that looks worse into the building they just left. So when we do this work, we want to make sure we're doing it intentionally. And you can see things. We would move freshmen into that Steinmetz campus. We've talked with our board extensively about redesigning our high school experience. All the research says if you don't make it out of 9th grade with 5 credits, you're not going to graduate on time. And that's something that we noticed by looking at our own groups. So we think it's real important to separate our freshmen, allow some success to happen. They have a theme they call Thrive in 9 at the high school right now. But that wouldn't take place till 2025 after we've done some renovations to the campus and we've done some work. That would also allow us to empty the high school a little bit by about 700 kids, thus allowing us not to disrupt the school year and move kids around while we do construction at the high school, which is why you see that little arrow go on to the second. And then you see Fulton and you see like these parentheses type bubbles, and those would be all the schools that would swing in through Fulton as we work through their buildings. And then you see like Howe and Page get added in because they're swinging into Fulton. And then we've had a conversation, and again, if we're successful with the purchase of Kane, this becomes moot, or it just may look different. But we've talked about, we have 2 elementaries that are really a block apart, Lincoln and Kane. And we've talked about maximizing maybe a space that could serve both, still allow them to keep their identity, but give them a high quality space that could have many of the components of community schools that we've been working to include, like a mental health clinic, a dental clinic, other things that we want to do that we know are important for that community on Albany Street. And then there's this purple at the bottom that would cover kind of district-wide building condition priorities. And those are things that I'm going to show you in a minute would be identified by campus. So keep going, Tara. And I will apologize. Some of the font will get small, but we can leave the presentation with you guys if you wanted to see it. So this is where we are. Take people very high, then we'll bring people low. So right now, where that little star is, we're just planning and we're just talking and we're working our way to that dotted line that says May 16th, vote. And so nothing happens unless we have a successful proposition. We're a small city, so we're required to have supermajority, which is 60% or more. have to support this vote. So we've had a really great supportive community in the past for our budgets. Our hope is that that continues. We are going out at 0% tax, and so I just want to make a quick plug. That is the 6th year of us going out. Yeah, it's the 6th year of us going out as a district, and that's compliments to the board, who have been strong fiscal stewards of the district's work. And so once that vote happens, then we can start this process of really designing, having these conversations around concepts, and really moving this forward. Right now, we've just been high-level planning. Some of the stuff you see here on this banner are just proposals. So I'm going to walk behind President Porterfield here. This banner here is just high-level proposals of some of the things that we see occurring on our campus. And I'll take you through that, but we wanted to show you visually kind of what that looks like as well. And you also have a pretty cool brochure that we'll be mailing to all Schenectady residents. They'll be getting this along with the budget notification as well, so they'll be getting some mail and some literature that they can hopefully read and support us. Next slide, Tyrone. So this is really small, I apologize, but basically what this is every school's building condition survey summary. And what that means is like the total amount that would be needed to get the building up to snuff or up to a high quality, meaning, again, replacing windows, broken lockers, water fountains that may still be not compliant with lead regulations or need to be replaced, bathrooms that still need work. Some of our bathrooms, again, 95 years old. The stalls only last so long, right? And so we've been able to do some of it and keep some of the upkeep, but some of it really needs a complete gut and renovation. Some of our cafeteria space is not enough to feed more than 50 kids at a time. It's just not fair to the kids, it's not fair to the school staff, and it makes lunch start at 10:45 in some of our schools. 10:30. That's, I don't know about you, but it's a 10:30 lunch, and then you don't need to get until you probably get home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. That's a long gap for some of our kids. Hopefully they stay in our extended day and we give them a snack and sometimes dinner afterwards, but those are the things that we want to address, things that we think all kids deserve in comparison to surrounding districts. And then on the right, obviously we're in a new day and age when it comes to security. We've got some breakdowns in security that we also need to address. Things like secure vestibules, which means in some of our schools, as soon as you get into the door, you're in the building. There's not a vestibule that would keep you away or have you get buzzed in to then be checked. So some of that we need to address as we do this work in order to keep our most precious commodity, our children, safe from anything happening. Next slide. So this is just I'm going to go quick through these just because they're kind of repetitive, but you get an understanding. Again, I talked to you about $126 million at the high school. These are just some images right on the left. You can see some of the conditions. Now they don't stay like this. Our Brian Dangler is our chief facility officer, operations officer. His team will go in and replace that locker and maybe put a wood panel there, but then it just looks awkward, right? It just doesn't look well. But we wanted to show you that. We have single pane windows at the high school. So you know what our heating bill is? It's off the hook. NYSEG loves us. They love us. National Fuel, they love us. But the reality is we've got to do things to improve insulation and the quality and really try to regulate our temperatures. And again, I show that part of the school because that's what people think is the front of the school. That's on Plaza Street. People think that's the front entrance, and it really isn't. The front entrance is actually on the other side where the student bus loop is. So we want to change that because we do think it's an opportunity for us to make Plaza Street the entrance for parents and families and community to come in, and students can still come in on the back side. Some of the things on the right on the program improvements are just a laundry list of just some of the building condition items. But we also want an enhanced programming here. Culinary program is one we have at Steinman's. We think it should be at the high school. Getting kids to work either in our own cafeteria, but also host culinary events at the high school. We're really excited potentially that could happen. Our facilities for athletics is, our pool. Everyone loves our pool, right? And so we've done some work this past year, but also looking at other parts like locker rooms, health and wellness facilities, replacing some of them, team rooms. Some of it is just HVAC work, and making things ADA accessible, which we often forget about. We have a lot of students who may be either wheelchair bound or just need accommodations, and we also have families. And sometimes our own access to buildings isn't as conducive as we would like. Next slide, Tom. This is, again, just visual. Everything in purple would be areas we would touch, and I'm just going to walk over here just to kind of show you an example. This part here in purple, if we were to move the freshmen, which is our plan, would become vacant right away and allow us to work while kids still attend school, which is important. Some districts don't do that, which means they can only work when? Nights and summers. Not too many contractors want to work nights and summers, right? And so we believe this will give us an advantage to find laborers that'll be committed to the project throughout the year, because they can work uninterrupted during the school year, during the school day. They don't have to give up nights and summers to do construction. And then we would move throughout all those purple areas in the building. And those are just some mock-ups, like a mock-up locker room. Again, nothing's been decided. We would have kind of like design focus groups and things like that to really determine what we want. Plus, we got to have red, blue in there, Schenectady colors. Next. Again, another high-level view. Deputy Superintendent Lynn Rutnick and her team have done a redesign conversation. This turns the redesign conversation into reality, giving wings of the building to fall to these career-themed leadership academies, which we believe is really important for our kids. Because I don't know about you, when I went to high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I was always there for either an elective course, art, music, PE, maybe sometimes a girl, but more often than not, it was for something that wasn't math, English, science, social studies. They are important, but we think that the career-themed courses will keep our kids engaged, drive, and push them forward. And so we've kind of dedicated various parts of the building to support that initiative. And so you can see there's a business, leadership, community, and humanities, a STEM, culinary, and an arts. And then that, like teal blue, is where kind of the administration of the building would live. Counselors, social workers, assistant principals, principals. Next. This is another mock-up, same thing, but what I want to show you is that we are doing work already as part of this, separate from the revitalization plan. So although we're asking to borrow this $300 million, we are doing work already. Those tennis courts are going to be worked on this summer, so we'll have brand new tennis courts there, so anybody who plays tennis. I think they'll be able to do more than tennis. I think there's a raging sport that everybody loves, the pickleball, so they'll be lined, I think, for tennis, pickleball. And we're also expanding the parking because we're going to take some of the parking out that's up there, and we're going to expand it. So you see that darker gray, that'll be new parking for the building. Next slide. This is Central Park. Another great building, but needs a lot of work. You can see some of the door locks still on there. They're not even ADA compliant because they require you to be able to turn the lock on the top. Look at the flooring in some of the pictures. Again, we've done the best we could given the time. Tile, mixed matched and not really working out. We've got paint peeling off the ceiling in some parts of the building due to moisture and just wear and tear. The fire. The chimney there needs some serious masonry work, and that school needs a lot of masonry work. It's an older school, it's great architecture, but you can see, and I think, and I'm not sure, I haven't talked to the mayor on this, there's actually a city emblem at the very top of the building, and then we know that we've been discovering through deeds work that some of the buildings used to belong to the city at one point. So maybe we'll be sending you the $300 million bill. I'm just kidding. Next one. Again, this is Steinmetz, right in the kind of Hamilton Hill, Mount Pleasant kind of community. Again, something that I think at one point was a middle school, McKinley Middle School. If you were in Schenectady long enough, you may remember that name. It was a middle school at one point, Steinmetz Middle School at one point, and then it became cities as our campus or cities and schools. It's a variety of different things. We're looking to take this and bring this as a freshman leadership academy at Steinmetz campus and really give our freshmen their own place to grow, to thrive, and to leave there with 5 or more credits on track to graduate as they head into sophomore year. And a lot of people always ask me, like, why are you doing that? Why are you separating it? That is our most fragile group at the high school. If we can get kids to 10th grade as a true 5 credit or more, they typically just soar on their own. And we have about 80% graduation rate. So we're looking at the 22% or so that don't make it out in 4 years. And that's what we always see, that they don't make it out freshman year with enough credits, and then they're behind the 8-ball. And then it's just tough. Yeah. So that's kind of what Steinmetz looks like there. Next one, I'll show you another preview of it. Because we're going to make it a freshman academy, we want to make sure that it has, it looks inviting, right? And so you can see right now, all of that in the gray and the green is just field. There's a little bit of parking there, but we would add parking because we get a lot of complaints that we park in front of people's houses, our staff. There's not enough parking. So we want to help out the community as well and say, look, we're going to put more parking in our facility. We're going to add a soccer field there so the kids can go out for physical education and have a great field to play in. That would be done there, and there'd be a basketball court, which I don't think there is a basketball court there other than the one in Hamilton Hill. I can't find. Jerry Borough Park is, I think, the next closest outdoor basketball court in that area. So this would give our kids and community an outdoor space, along with some pickleball courts and some tennis courts there as well. And the areas in orange would have some renovation. The cafeteria there is currently a little small, so that's the blue section. We would look to expand that cafeteria out so we can feed our kids. And again, I think it would be a great place for our freshmen to thrive. Next slide. And again, this is just a mock-up showing that it does fit. People have said, oh, why do you fit 700 kids in there when there's only 100 kids there currently? Well, it's because we're not using all the rooms, but we have auditorium space in there. We have a really great gym there. I think a show was filmed there at one point. I hear all the time when I go there, they say, oh, they filmed a reality TV show was filmed there. I'm not sure if I remember the name, but Love and Hip Hop or something like that. Some show was filmed there. Next slide. Again, just more test fit. But Van Corlear, another school on the opposite side. So we've been also intentional to kind of hit multiple areas of the city, not just focus on one part of the city of Schenectady, but you can see there some pictures and some challenges. That's another school that as soon as you get in through that front door, you are in the building. There's nothing that secures you, an outsider, in from our kids. So we have to address that. The condition and exterior needs some work, some of the masonry work. We've got these old vintage meters that are great. They're very historical, but they need to be replaced. Some of the mechanical system, fire alarm system, a lot of things that we are still running, they're working, but they're getting to the point where there's like one engineer in the whole area that can work on them, and that person decides to retire, we're in trouble, right? So, next one. Howe Elementary, I talked about this school in terms of the age. Again, looks great and beautiful, but times have changed. You go in through that front white door there, you're in the building. You're in the main office, like you literally walk into the main office. There's nothing stopping you moving that forward, so we want to create, again, another secure vestibule. And there was some work done in the past. In the 70s, I believe there was an addition added for some additional classrooms. Was it the 70s, Kathy?
And we've redone it in the recent years. The whole
Yeah, there's like a wing that looks different.
whole left wing was redone in 17, 18.
Yeah, and so there's been some work there, but it really doesn't match the program. And you can see some of the infrastructure's falling. You can see some of these are these cool little gargoyles that are there, though. If you get a chance, they're pretty neat on the exterior, but we do need to have some work. Tons of ventilation. There's not adequate music in our classrooms in those buildings. There is a cafeteria that also serves as a gymnasium. So talk about programming and what the challenge is there, right? So you want to think about how do we create separate spaces. It's a tough campus because we're pretty landlocked over there, given the community that we're in. But we do have some field that we can look at playing, maybe redesigning. So this is one of the other schools that we want to target as well. Next one, Tara. Page Elementary School, everyone loves Page, right? And one of the furthest points of the city, bordering Niskayuna, and you can see that some of the challenges as well there from the exterior. Look at that electric box. It's got the old circle electric kind of breakers. And so I don't know where they would sell those anymore, but I think Brian has a box somewhere to keep the school electric running. But we have a ton of windows, ton of exterior replacements. There's some crawl space there that's technically we have to have people wear like oxygen tanks to work in there because there's not enough fresh air in there. And so we're working on that right now to try to upgrade that. But it's just a building that's just over the lifetime has basically exceeded its life, and it's time to bring new life in it, bring some upgrades. And it sits in a really important part of the community. Next one, Tyler. Kane, we've talked about this and we have gotten permission from our board. We're working on this. We're already going to be putting this as a proposition for the community to vote for us to purchase Kane for $2 million. So it's a $2 million purchase from St. Luke's Parish. We're going to be putting this on as a proposition. So voters will have basically a proposition to approve the budget, proposition to approve the Schenectady revitalization plan to borrow up to $300 million, and then there'll be a proposition to purchase Kane from St. Luke's Parish for $2 million. This school is full. We have a little bit under 300 kids there, but we just can't use the whole building currently because part of it is the rectory section where the nuns were, and so it's just not able to be used by children or with children in it. We can use it for adults, and we have like office spaces in there, but we can't bring kids in there for counseling or any type of support, or we can't even have any classes over there. So it makes part of the building unusable. Next slide. This is kind of what we would envision that we would do if we purchase it and the voters support us. We would change the layout, and that blue would be an addition. We would add classrooms to Kane so that we could fully maximize that. And remember I talked to you a little bit about Lincoln down the street? This would allow us to have more kids in a community that is very much a walking community to enroll in that campus. It would allow us to add more pre-K seats in the district, which we know is really a high demand. And we would add a better way to drop students off. Right now, if you're on Albany Street at like 7:45, good luck, because it is tough between the two schools and traffic in the street. And so this would allow us to maybe create a better way to get our kids in safely, parents through traffic. Next one. Lincoln, which is again right down the street, community school, also really important to the work we're trying to do. And we took some of our local media to tour that building with us to show them some of the challenges with the cafeteria, the stairwells. I can't go down the stairwells without ducking my head because it's just built for anybody over 5 foot. It wasn't built for anybody over like 5 feet. So it's great for the elementary, not so much for the staff. So they got to duck their heads in some parts as they go down the steps. But we have a ton of work to do there as well, replacing flooring, doors, hardware. The pavement is deteriorating. Again, and it's another tough place. I think we only get like 5 buses there, but they take up all of the side street, and then all of our parents are dropping off along Albany Street, which is just really tough. So we would like to change that, increase parking. Next slide. Fulton, we talked about a swing space currently not being used by children or for children, and we would have to make some upgrades there before we put kids in there, which is why we would start with both Fulton and Steinmetz before we put kids back in there. Those buildings would be really good shape, and people would like to be in them, and it would support our ability to use as high quality swing space as we do work in other schools. So what that would mean is we move school out, put them at Fulton for the year, close Howell down, do the work over the course of a year, maybe a year and a half, then bring them back to a brand new campus, ready to go, and then put another school into Fulton. Kind of what I showed you on the timeline that you saw earlier. Next slide, Tara. So I always get asked, how do we pay for this? How do we pay for this? Because we serve the community that we serve, we have a maximum cost allowance of about 98%, which that means is for every dollar we borrow, 98% of it comes back to us in the form of aid from the state. So 300 million, 98%, we're going to be responsible for about 5.5, I'll just round up to say $6 million. Okay, so $6 million is what we would be responsible for, and what we've already built into our general funds through capital reserves, Excel aid. We've already got the money earmarked aside to cover that $6 million as we make the payments. Again, we pay and then we get reimbursed at a 98% kind of maximum cost allowance. And so every school has this every 5 years. So we get a dollar value for every school what we can borrow. And in that 5 years, it renews itself. So we've been working with our financial partners, again, SEI Architects, Terry Galuli, who's a Mount Pleasant alumni, he's my CFO. He won't do me wrong, right, Terry? Right. Precious on him. He's also like an accountant, auditor, everyone knows Terry. But we've done a lot of good work, pre-work, to make sure that this makes sense. But I always like to show this because this is right in our state regulations and capital project funding. We're not doing anything tricky here. We're just trying to fully maximize the fact that our district gets 98% back on the dollar. And then, as a result of the pandemic, we're in a really different place fiscally. And so I think it's the right time to make this move for our kids and community. Next slide, Tara. Again, zero impact on taxpayers. We really want to emphasize that, because at the end of the day, if we impact taxes, it can impact the rents on some of our families, and we don't want anybody to have a reason to increase rent or cost. But what you can see is maximum cost of lands, 98%. Capital reserve, we already have a 2% aside, which is about 5.5 million, and then we have an Excel aid, which is about 3.7 million. So actually, we have about 9.2 already put aside, and so we wanted to make sure we can demonstrate that. That's in our budget now. The board will hopefully adopt the budget on Wednesday, and we'll be moving forward. And then I just want to again highlight some of the ongoing projects and repairs. You're gonna see the tennis courts at the high school being worked on. We're replacing the boiler already at Fulton. We're doing some abatement at Page that I talked about, that there's really low air quality. We're doing some water line work, given some of the lead challenges that we have at Washington Irving. And we're doing some kitchen projects, and that runs itself through the school lunch program that we have, which we have a separate fund of about $5.6 million. We're renovating some of our kitchens in our elementary schools in various campuses. And then we obviously have some American Rescue funds that we're using to redo the Mount Pleasant field and track, which I'll hopefully show you in a second. And then every year we do about a $100,000 capital outlay project. That's always going to happen every year. We're allowed to spend up to $100,000 on a capital project. Tyrone, next slide. Keep going. That's just a timeline, really small. Just trying to show you. Again, I talked to this about you earlier, the tennis courts. Next slide, Tyrone. This is what we're really excited about. This will be breaking ground hopefully at the latest June at Mount Pleasant. Where's Matt? June, I believe, is the timeline. He's my architect, one of my architects. This is exciting because this is a community that really is going to benefit, I think, extremely from having a new field, new turf, new track. If you go to Mount Pleasant track now, it is crumbling, deteriorating. Again, no fault to the zone. There's only so much you can do. But we're really proud to have another field that we could have athletic competitions. We can host things. It's going to be right in the heart of the Schenectady community over there by Mount Pleasant. We all know that Mount Pleasant used to be a powerhouse high school here, and we're excited because we think it'll bring back some of the excitement. We have a great youth program here in Schenectady, Belmont, Schenectady, Pop Warner. They're going to go crazy over this field when they see it. We also have a food stand that's dedicated for Mr. George Rose that we'll be rededicating for him when we get this done. It'll be in the top left in the red, and you see on the drawing on the left. And so we already have it named for him, but we're going to rededicate it for him in honor of his legacy and the work that he did for children. And we just think it's be really powerful. It's a tribute. We're also going to add visitors seating on the other side. Right now, everyone has to sit on one side, and that's never good when you're the home team. So we want to put the visitors on the other side. We'll put, again, the ability is we'll be able to host sectional events here and bring some, hopefully, competitive action and more events to the Schenectady community. And if you've ever parked behind Mount Pleasant, you know it's a tough place to park. This expands our parking behind there for our staff and allows them to have a safe way to get to the field versus trying to get through that. And so it's just something that needs to be done, given that that's a pretty flagship campus for us in Schenectady, and we thought it was important. Everything in the light green we own, the stuff on the other side of the green is city property. Keep going. And that's the 890 there, if you were trying to think about visually where that was. We're going to add some secure vestibules at SCLA. These are just architectural drawings. Keep going, Terry. Same thing with Mount Pleasant, adding some secure vestibules so that way when parents come in, they have a way to be, or not parents, anybody comes into the building, there's a way to securely clear them before they get into the rest of the campus. Keep going. Yates, we're working on the kitchens. We talked about kitchen renovation. So we're doing some work over at Yates to expand the kitchen, redesign the kitchen, make it more functional for us to serve our kids, adding a walk-in cooler, some additional storage. Next one. This is Pleasant Valley's. We're going to actually double their cafeteria size. So that little line in the middle is where the current wall is. We're going to expand it out and be able to service twice the number of kids in there at one time, thus making it easier for them to run lunches, flip their food line around and allow them to serve some warmer meals to our kids. So this is really exciting for our kids and teachers, and our principals love this because they can feed more kids at once and not have to have lunch at 10 a.m. or 10:30. Next. This is another thing that we're doing. These playgrounds are starting this year as well. Some of these are separate from the capital, the Schenectady revitalization plan, and these are some of the schools and some of the mock-ups we have already to start. And these are ADA compliant, which again is real important because sometimes we have playgrounds that kids in wheelchairs or kids who have different accommodations can't access. Next slide. Again, this is just our timeline for this. So a lot of this stuff is taking place come towards the end of the school year, moving into next, and then just questions. Sorry, I know it was a lot, but I want to be mindful of you guys had a late start with pre-meeting.
So first of all, thank you for coming in, for school board members for coming in, for staff for coming in.
Sure.
Providing us with this information. I think taxpayers are going to be really, really happy about the zero tax impact, but also the revitalization of all the campuses. I think it's important and timely. So are there questions or comments? Ms. Patrick?
Hi. I have 3 questions. I think it's fantastic, and I'm thrilled with not only this, but also all of the programmatic initiatives that are underway at the school district. So, I appreciate everything that you and your team are doing in the school district. So I have 3 questions. You want them one at a time, or should I?
However you want to do it, man.
So this is
Maybe you want to
this is
give
an easy
turns.
one. In terms of the Fulton campus, as a swing
Sure.
during the, will Fulton then remain open as a school after this entire project is completed, or is that part of the?
Yeah, so that part of the plan would be, so right now we have a high request for pre-K. We are offering pre-K 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
If there's an opportunity for us to do 3-year-olds, there's usually grants and opportunities.
Yep.
We would like to explore that. We know that having a safe place for our families is important for them to be able to work. And if we can offer that at a younger age, that's important for our families and residents. So ultimately, we would bring it back online as a school at the tail end of our project. But remember, this is only a phase of the schools. We would have other elementaries to go through before we get to that point. But ultimately, we would bring it online. And vacant space is usually an invitation for other parties to establish schools or potential networks, and so we want to make sure we use all of our spaces.
Okay. Next, what will happen to now I know the culinary arts you mentioned as a wing at the high school, but what would happen with some of the other activities that go on currently at the Steinmetz Learning Academy?
So they all would fall into those leadership communities. So we have a business, we have STEAM, so anything else that would translate, we would look to bring them up to the high school. But we also think freshmen need to have that exposure too, as they make a decision into which leadership community they would go into. So we probably would still keep a culinary space at the Steinmetz campus, but allow kids to get a sample. Maybe it's Intro to Culinary 1, and then they make a decision to stay on that pathway. Maybe they only take it for 10 weeks and a new group of kids takes it. We're working on that right now with course pathways and electives to make sure there's a menu of options. But we believe that kids should have almost like an exploratory course to say, here's AutoCAD for 3 weeks, here's graphic design for 3 weeks, here's culinary, and then when you go next year to 10th grade, which community do you want to be a part of?
I think that's awesome. Okay, and then finally, this is sort of the big one, but how does sort of future demographic data fit into this overall plan? So in other words, over the next 7 years, is there a projection that school-age children will expand along with the expansion of these buildings?
We mainly lose most of our kids at the secondary level. It's when they typically either go to an out-of-district charter, they transfer to a private or parochial. Our elementaries are pretty packed right now. It's mainly middle school and high school where there's usually, people use a choice. They'll use more choice at that level. We've done a demographic study. We've been about 9,100 for quite some time in Schenectady in terms of total enrollment. I think if we do this well enough, we'll get some of those families back. Like right now, we have about 500 families that go to charter schools. So if you think about it, if we were to absorb 500, we wouldn't be able to take them. We just don't have the space. So, we'd have 9,600 kids in there, we just wouldn't have the space. So part of the work that we have to do here is add some classrooms so that we can absorb them. And like I said, that's why I included that census data. That was 10-year, Schenectady grew. And I think part of the charge that City Council's been doing is trying to figure out how to continue to revitalize this community. You got great developers like Metroplex trying to figure out how to bring more businesses and other entities here. And so, we think we want to be a part of that. I'm a firm believer that people choose communities by their school districts versus anything else. And so if we're a viable option for families, then hopefully everything else will fall soon.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Palomino?
Are you going to bond the entire $300 million at once?
Terry?
No, we'll borrow as the project is being rolled out.
Mr. Williams?
Superintendent Sawyer, definitely thank you for being here. I applaud the efforts of not only this project, but everything that you're doing. And I think it's very important to note the show of support that's here in the room with you. Definitely, I believe that our community is something that we need to continually invest in providing our educators and students a matching environment to learn and grow is important, as you so eloquently highlighted. My question was, you identify this huge figure that we're going to invest. how do we maintain it? And does that incorporate including more staff? Because this is absolutely a generational investment, as you noted, that we hope will last for another 100 years.
Yeah, I think we've made significant investment in staff. The board's been keeping me to task on making sure, first of all, that we repaired the harm when we laid off all these individuals in the past. The board's been real, that was a priority when I came in. We gave everyone an opportunity to return back that was impacted. But what we've done is we've used ratios and things of that nature to make sure that the square footage that we have has the right number of custodial staff, facility staff to support it. And we've done that. Like this last 2 years in our budget, we've been able to get back to a place where we think we're at pretty good standard in terms of ratio. I think the work now is protecting that. And typically foundation aid won't go down. You just may not grow as much. And so right now, the governor did fully fund foundation aid, which is why Schenectady, I think, it's about 30 million in the last 2 years, has seen
45 in the last one.
Yeah, 45 million in growth in our foundation aid in the last 2 years. But they never typically take away from foundation aid. It's just you don't grow. And so if we stay at the ratios that we are now, we believe we can maintain what we have. And again, as we sing, our work is going to be what positions do we really need to replace because they're necessary versus what are nice to have. And that's going to be the work kind of moving forward.
I just had a second question. One of my earlier questions that you accurately identified was how does this improve quality of learning for our students? And I think you did that really well. But the question that I want to ask is, how does this put us in line with some of our neighboring school districts? Are we then in line or are we ahead, per se, if that's the right terminology to use? But definitely, I think we want to have a community school district that we believe in. So where does this put us?
I think in some cases it may surpass some of our neighboring districts. But again, remember, we're only doing about 8 campuses of 17. So it's not all of our buildings, but it will start that journey. And if we do this well enough, some of our campuses will look better than some of our peers in the region. You got Niskuna right next door to us. They got some buildings that they'll be super excited to say, hey, they're going to probably take the approach in their community to say, wait a minute, if they have it, we need to have it as well. But I can tell you that our high school, if we do this well, will stand alone as a flagship. And if you've seen what Albany's done with their high school, if you've had the opportunity, we want to make sure that we are giving our kids in Schenectady the same exact experience as a large urban community like Albany's given to their kids.
Thank you.
I have a question about transportation. When you close the one school, now children from other neighborhoods going to be going to other schools, and that will impact parents.
Sure.
In some instances. So is there a plan to make sure that the children have the transportation and, they are...
Yeah, we bus a lot of our kids now that need it for a variety of reasons. And again, if we're going to move somebody out of their walking neighborhood, we're going to have to accommodate for that. The good thing is our bus transportation, if there is an increase in cost, I think we get 95% back on transportation. So again, because of the community we serve, we have a lot of aid and reimbursable expenses. So we spend, then we'll get it back the following year. So we will have to be aware of that as we move forward, but we don't want to have someone not attend the school, stay with that community. And we've done it in the past here. So like Howe at one point, Hamilton lived at Fulton for a little bit while they worked at Hamilton. And we busted everyone over there. They needed to be bused. Most of our parents drive our kids because we're only 10 square miles. But if it's needed, we would definitely provide the transportation.
Thank you. Other questions?
So I think it's clear that my opinion might be a tad biased due to my proximity to the district, but I want to say that, I think it's important that people understand that this is not just an investment in just creating, a better school environment for a student, but really what it does is that, when I talk with people in the community, there's, people talk about what about, the vocational programs and skills and trades. And so this is really an opportunity to make sure that we can do that in a way as a district that is really, really effective and efficient. And right now, I think the district does a really good job as partnering with community partners to kind of fill gaps and for our kids. But I think that this will really present an opportunity to improve the quality of educational experience as well as opportunities for our students. There's a direct, correlation there, and I think that that's just something that's important to know.
Any other
I think
questions?
there's a hand over here, I'm not sure. Is there a hand over here? No?
No?
Sorry.
Well,
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it, and hope to see you all on the 16th. I can't tell you how to come up. I can tell you how to.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll keep it. He said we could.
Does that have other stuff on here? Can I just save it to the desktop?
Oh, no, you just sent it to me.
You sure you don't want me to drag it to the desktop? Save it?
No, that's not.
Take care, Gabrielle. Nice to see you.
I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee. We have two items on the agenda tonight, first of which is the 2003 non-fatal shooting initiative that will actually be discussed by Chief Clifford.
Thank you very much. I am here to ask the City Council to consider accepting a grant from New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services for a non-fatal shooting initiative grant that we were provided for. The funding will be used to ensure a comprehensive investigation on all non-fatal shootings, which are bullet-to-body shooting cases. There will be a particular focus on circumstances where victims are uncooperative and to support the evidence-based prosecution mindset that is often used in domestic violence cases. Our task force, which is already currently underway, will consist of a police detective, a crime analyst from the Schenectady Police Department, a district attorney office investigator, in addition to a district attorney prosecutor. The funding, which has been allocated for the time period of April 1st to June 30th, is $89,349. The breakdown is $42,682 for a police detective and $46,667 to be used for overtime associated with investigations. There's no match for this grant, and the agreement, and I correct myself, the agreement covers March 1st through June 30th. And then the next give cycle, which starts July 1st through June 30th, will include this as a component of it.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments? Ms. Moorfield?
So right now we're in April, and this started in March. If there were any costs associated that the department has already incurred with this, how would that be covered? If you already incurred the costs prior to us approving this?
They're just part of my normal investigations in the budget that we have.
So will you be refunding, will you be putting that money back? If we've spent overtime already and there's this money, because it's almost June, and would you be refunding that back to these investigations that are already taking place that are described here?
Yes, we can go back retroactively, and we will be doing this, going back retroactively to March 1st and taking every investigation that we did that involved a non-fatal shooting, and we're going to give it a project code so that we could use this funding for that. So in essence, a good portion of what we've already spent from March 1st until now will be refunded into the operating budget for our overtime budget, and then we will have the remainder to be used up through June 30th.
No. And do you have a number of fatal shootings that have non-fatal that have taken place since March 1st? Do you have a number?
I do. I'll look it up here. So year to date, we have 3 non-fatals, 0 fatals. Last year, 2022, we had 15 non-fatals and 4 fatals. And in 2021, we had 22 non-fatals and 1 fatal. And most recently on Eastern Avenue, we've had a couple of them. We have some really good success stories on those. So the team's already working very hard And one thing I wanted to note is that, I really don't want to go into details here, but we are utilizing every tool that you've given us over the last year in these investigations. All the technology that we're using it to our advantage to really solve these crimes, which is proving fruitful so far.
Any other questions or comments?
Ms. Grooms, so the likelihood in terms of the next round of funding, generally, if we've received this funding in the past, is there a high likelihood that we get the funding again? And if not, how would we continue the work that's being done under this grant?
You'll be finding out about that soon, but we've already received the funding award from the state. I believe it's in the $1.2 million range.
Okay.
And last year, we were in the close to $800,000 range, so we're getting approximately $400,000 more to include not only non-fatal shooting investigations, but a couple other things. So we're working out all the details on that for our Give 10 application that we have to submit in a couple weeks. And hopefully when we get the award, we'll be back here asking for acceptance of it.
Okay, great. Congratulations on the grant.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Just a clarifying question, if the council, the committee does pass this request, I just want to make sure that I have it, is to accept the award. And Chief, are you adding one position to the current staffing total? So you're adding one detective position that's not currently in the budget, is that right? Or just want to make sure that I have it.
That is correct. Did I miss that?
I know it's in there. I just want to make sure that I'm reading it
Yes.
correctly.
I apologize for that.
So it's to accept the grant award and also add one police detective position to the current budget.
Thank you. Yes,
Right.
that is correct. That is the request, is to add one to the current budget. It essentially means up into we will be adding one in our budget request come this summer. And we're going to add one theoretically for this that is fully funded by DCJS with Fringe also.
Thanks, Chief.
Any other questions or comments? Definitely think it's important where you're doing the work to highlight that, and I appreciate what the Schenectady Police Department has been doing. Is there any ability to make some of these findings transparent where it's respective to the work that you're doing? Definitely, I think it's important to credit what is being done to ensure that these circumstances are only being done in the most appropriate manner. And I think that part of our responsibility is educating the community on what we're doing behind the scenes. If that makes sense.
It does, and we've been doing a better job, I think, about putting out press releases when the work's been done and highlighting the work that's been done by everybody involved. And I want to just be clear that the District Attorney's Office and the Schenectady County Sheriff's Department plays a big role in this, and they've been helping us tremendously. So we're trying to put out the information when it happens, and especially when we're able to make an arrest. And provide that security and safety to certain communities, and also share in the who did the work.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Furley.
So, Chief, it seems like gun violence is trending down in our community over the last couple of years, and I think that that's a really a great thing. And would you attribute, some of the tactics that will be continuing on through this initiative to that, or?
I do. We've been working on investigating non-fatal shootings, taking a deeper dive into them for years now, and I think that's contributed to the downward trend that we've been seeing. This is a program that we offered to DCJS, and they accepted it, and then a very similar request that we put in became part of Give 10. So I'm not sure if we played a role in that or not, but it certainly is helping with our community with reducing gun violence. Unfortunately, it still exists. It's very mobile right now. We're seeing it come from different areas of the Capital District. So we have to stay on top of it, especially the areas where we're seeing it most frequently. And that's what we do. We respond, we investigate, and we try to send a message out there that you can't come to Schenectady and commit these offenses without being held accountable.
So is this a part of the our police reform that we submitted to the state, or is it going to be added to that? Because my understanding that's a document that can continue to be amended. Is it currently in there, or is it something that you're considering adding to part of the reinvention reinforcement?
No, this is not a part of that, and I haven't really thought about whether we would add it to it, but, you know, certainly it's something we can start talking about in the same context that we talk about reform, is changing the way that we're investigating crimes, and specifically addressing the activity that's happening in certain neighborhoods, because we're not just going to those neighborhoods, solving the crime and leaving. We're putting our technology in those areas. We're assessing those areas to say, okay, why did it happen here? Is there anything we can change in that community that will keep it safer in the future, whether it's changing the environment, bringing in engineering, or adding cameras, or just obviously adding more patrols, increasing the lighting, all these things.
Any other questions or comments? So at this time, I would accept a motion.
I'll move it.
Second, I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is amending the Schenectady City Code to add provisions relating to the use of school bus stop arm cameras. There was recently a public hearing on the 10th of April, and at this point, we just need to have a motion to accept the change code.
Thank you. I actually took a look at this a bit further after speaking with you, President Porterfield. I'm actually okay with the language. I just want the council to be aware that, and you have it here in front of you in your packet on page 9, where it says penalties for offenses. The amounts in here are guided by state law. So if state law changes, we will have to revisit this in terms of the penalties. So I just want you to be aware of that. But the language in, and I took, as I said, I took a bit of a deeper dive into it. Says we really need to state what the penalties are. We can't just refer to the state law, which was going to be my initial suggestion. We just reflect what the state law says. You know, if you want to know what the penalties are, look at the state law. But I think it's better for us to itemize the penalties, but just with the understanding that we may have to change the penalties as state law changes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I need a motion to.
I'll move it.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any other items to follow before Public Safety Committee? Hearing none, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Second.
make that motion.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Next, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee. There are 3 items on the agenda tonight. First of which is a call for a public hearing to amend the 2022-2023 HUD Annual Action Plan. That will be spoken to by Daniel Gray. Mr. Gray.
Good evening, everybody. Before you, we are looking to move our paving allocation over to our parks allocation of our CDBG budget that was passed last year. It's just to kind of help shore up money that was expended on Jerry Burrell, assuming that we'll be able to invest additional money in parks moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Ms. Porter?
And how much money is it?
200,000.
So from paving to parks.
Yep, and we have a public hearing on March 11th.
May 11th. Sorry.
I'm sorry. May 11th. May 11th, 2023.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Cody?
Just looking at the recommendation here so that I'm aware of it again when if the council were to approve this. The only ask is for a call for a public hearing, not to actually amend it currently because it needs to be proposed first and through a public hearing, right? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any motion?
I'll move it.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Next item, we have the allocation of the $36,000 of CDBH funds. CDBJ, wow. Funds to the 2023 Tree Planting Collaborative. Mr. Gray?
So we're looking to utilize $36,600 towards our annual tree project we do. We traditionally contract with community fathers, so we're looking to do that again this year.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing's none, no one else.
I thought you said you were committee council.
So, yeah, we were looking to get the council approval to enter the contract with Community Fathers.
Okay.
We have the money allocated. I think there was some miscommunication and we submitted 2 different legislative requests. That was my mistake. The first one authorized the money and also asked for the end of the contract. We're looking to really the second one at this point.
So Mr. Kohler, will we have to flip-flop them? The two items?
So I understand that the money's already been allocated?
Correct.
The money's already been allocated, you don't need to make a resolution for that, since
That's
it's
what
already
I'm saying.
allocated. Right, you only need to,
Do the contract.
Item number 3.
Number 3.
correct. So 2 can be struck,
Right.
and it would just be 3.
Okay, so I guess just for formality, moving to the agenda item number 3, authorizing the mayor to enter a contract with Community Fathers Incorporated to manage the tree planting placard program. And as you just stated, are there any other questions or comments regarding that topic? Hearing none, can I please have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Are there any other items to recall the Finance Committee? If none, can I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Aye, we are adjourned.
I'd like to call to order City Development and Planning. We have 8 items on the agenda. The first item is award bidding contract for the improvements to Hillhurst and Fairview Parks. Mr. Wallens.
Hello.
Hi.
So we have in front of us the award bidding contract for improvements to Hillhurst and Fairview Park. We put out a base bid with 3 alternates. The base bid came back as a low of $324,000. The alternates were the construction of a dog park for $73,000, the renovations to the Fairview Park tennis facility for $112,000, and some amenities at the dog park that came in at $47,000. Our budget for the project is $500,000, so what we're recommending is that we award the base bid of Hillhurst Park and the Fairview Park tennis improvements.
Any questions? Mr. Palomini?
Is the bocce ball courts and some of the other improvements around Fairview going to be a separate entity?
Yes.
All right.
Ms. Peck?
Yeah, I'm just highly supportive of this. I appreciate the work that's been done in both the design phase as well as getting the bids and going back and forth. So I appreciate this and definitely would move it forward.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Wallens. All right, item number 2 is just a reminder that for the abandoned portion of Amelia Street, that the public hearing will be on April 24th. Item number 3, also a reminder that the abandonment of a portion of Larch Street, the public hearing will be held on April. Okay, gotcha. And a reminder that on item number 4, amending 248-18 of the Schenectady City Code to designate Fuller Street from South Church to South Ferry Street a one-way street, and that public hearing will also be held on the 24th. Your agenda says 27th, so you can just correct that. The next item on the agenda is a ceremonial resolution recognizing Justin R. Chairs. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Porterfield. There was recently a Shriners Charity Ball in the city of Schenectady, and Justin Chairs, his formal title is the illustrious potentate, if I'm saying that correctly.
Potentate.
Potentate. I might have said it differently. But as the head of the Albany Shriners, and they're related in New York, and as the youngest in his formal title, I think it is more than befitting to bestow upon him a ceremonial resolution, and I would like to see that pushed forward.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item is a ceremonial resolution recognizing, I'm not sure how you pronounce his first name, Brown.
Jaye. So Jaye Brown is a young man born and raised right here in the city of Schenectady. Has really worked really hard. He's a professional fighter. With his record right now is 13-1. He was recently, his last fight aired on Showtime Showbox, which is a pretty significant accomplishment. He's an ambassador for our city when he's talking about, even some of the trials and tribulations that he had to overcome, the hard work and dedication that he had to pour into his career thus far. I think it's an inspiring message to the young people who have dreams of making it to the heights that he has. So I think that he really embodies the fighting spirit and the resiliency of our city. So I think that we should recognize him. I'd be honored to do so.
Any questions or comments?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 7 is a ceremonial resolution recognizing Asian American Heritage Month, which is May 1st through May 31st. So just want to recognize those in our community, from the API community for their Heritage Month. Any questions or comments? I'll take a motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And item number 8 is a ceremonial resolution recognizing Judge Robert Hoffman, who retired. And so we just want to give him a resolution to recognize all his years of service to the community. So any questions or comments?
I'll move it.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
That is the last item on the agenda. So thank you all, and have a good evening. Motion to adjourn, that's right. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.